Rob, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Thanks. How you doing?
Good, good. It's my first international podcast.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Huh.
I'm actually set up to have a few of them this month, but you are the first of all,
Hmm.
and it's pretty cool. It's 4:45 Colorado time, Mountain Time here, and for you it's right around 1 p.m. Is that right?
Almost one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you in the world? Where are you meeting us from?
Yeah. I live in the Netherlands, a little place below the sea level. Well, I live on the first floor, so I'm safe. But yeah.
Okay. Safe for now is what we say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear some more about your experiences living out there. A lot of people, fantasize about living in Amsterdam and Netherlands in general.
Do they?
But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. If you think about like the Euro trip, the first stop is Amsterdam, right?
I guess it is. Yeah.
Especially before they legalized weed everywhere out here in the U.S.
True.
That's where we wanted to stop by for a blunt and take a walk down. What's it called? The red light district or whatever.
Red light district. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We have
that used
those.
to
Yeah.
be that used to be an attraction, right? Now it's more frowned upon.
Yeah.
But more on that later. Rob, if you don't mind giving us a little intro on you.
Yeah. Sure.
What do you do? How'd you get on TikTok and other platforms like YouTube? What's your message? I've looked a little bit into it, and before I go ahead and ask the long list of questions that
Yeah.
I've set up for you, I'll let you introduce yourself and kind of explain what you're doing, what you're up to, and who you are, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Of course. So my name is Rob. I run a YouTube channel and I got some social media pages, TikTok, mainly TikTok. I run Instagram as well, but TikTok does the best. I'd say that I make self-improvement content and I focus a lot on, well, certain things. One thing I focus a lot right now on is quitting pornography, the no-fap thing, because I think that is something that is affecting a lot of people. Well, let's put it this way. It can really affect you in a very bad way, and I think it is affecting a lot of people. I have some experience with it myself, so I focus a lot on that. I talk about some other things as well. Right now, it's a lot about the porn thing, and I'm expanding to planning to expand on that a little bit more as well in the future. I describe myself as someone that likes to think about life, someone that tries to figure out how to live a good life with all of the different things, and then I like to talk about that on the internet.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Thank God that there's people doing it out there because these platforms like TikTok finally opened up this medium for somebody who doesn't have Oprah Winfrey clout and coverage to go out and put their message out. And if people want to see it,
Yeah,
they
true.
upvote it, and it just floats up, and more people see it. It ended up on my feed, and it ended up on hundreds of thousands of feeds. Clearly, you have a sizable following already on TikTok, so it means that people are connecting with what you're saying.
Yeah, so you discovered me on
uh,
TikTok?
Yes, that's right. It's actually where I go hunting for a lot of my podcast interviews because it's still very organic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to say about TikTok, good and bad. But one thing you can still credit it is that it's still organic. It's still not too affected by big tech,
Yeah.
meaning somebody that just had a funny dance for Christmas ends up being seen by the entire world, right? And somebody that has an interesting message and is constant and consistent, and people seem to be interested in what they're saying, also rises to For You pages. So you don't have to be somebody to be heard,
Yeah, true.
and I
True.
like that.
It's like
I
the
like that
the,
a
the,
lot.
the algorithm is still fresh and uncorrupted.
Right, and it's also different. It's very different. Facebook, and Instagram weren't designed that way to begin with. right? But forget about that for a second. We were talking about what your message is and how it's touching people. Because the fact that you showed up on my For You page and the fact that you do have a following already on TikTok and some of your videos have tens of thousands of likes and more in views, it's a indicator that we need to take seriously. And I do think it's a big issue, So let me, before I dig into more questions, ask you, what is NoFap?
So there's no one definition, but the idea is that you sort of quit watching porn, or at least do it significantly less, because, it's primarily about porn. I mean, the name suggests that you should not fap anymore, and for a lot of people, it's also not about the actual fapping. But for me, it's primarily about
masturbation.
Yes.
For
Yes.
clueless people like myself.
Yes, masturbating indeed. Yeah. To me, and I think to a lot of people, it's primarily about porn, because there's this thing about porn that if you do it too often, it's just not good for you. There's some effects it has on your brain, and the thing is, it's so easily accessible these days. So many people do it, and so many people are affected by it.
Right.
To such an extent that a lot of people are sort of starting to figure out, hey, I'm having these effects. And that's where the whole NoFap thing comes in. It's like it's trying to reverse this thing. It's trying to reverse the negative effects that fapping too much, masturbating too much to porn has done to you. If it has done these things, which is not the case for everyone. It's not like, right. I mean, some people are fine. Some people watch porn like once a month, once a week, and it's fine to them. But a lot of people watch it more often. A lot of people are starting to get addicted. They're starting to get their brain a little bit numbed. And for these people, if you quit it, you might start to see some benefits. You're not sure if you should call it benefits, because it's more like reversing the negative effects. But the idea is, you quit watching porn so that your brain starts to recover, and you'll see some of these benefits.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I can speak for myself and say that I was at this one threshold of a generation that was able to escape what was coming with the availability of the internet and porn for younger teenagers, because when I was 12, 13, 14, it just wasn't there yet. I wasn't exposed to it. So for me, the best I could do is get a hold of a Penthouse magazine, and that was hard to get addicted to.
Yeah. It's different. It's
right.
Yeah, true. It's not just the fact that it's more easily available right now, but it's also the way that it works, because it's more, right? There's a Jordan Peterson quote where he says, I believe it was Jordan Peterson, might be wrong on this, but I believe it was Jordan Peterson who said, it's possible to watch more naked ladies in a single porn viewing session than our ancestors would have seen in literally an entire lifetime. Right, and when we were younger, and when there was like the Penthouse magazine, it was not the same as porn, because it's just one picture, and then you go to the next page and it's another picture, right? But with porn, there's like, you open up the site and there's all these thumbnails, and
right, it's a world.
Yeah, there you see so much. You click one video, and then you start skipping within the video to like the next position, the next camera angle. 20 seconds later, you're bored. You go to the next video, and so it's so overstimulating to our brain. It's nothing compared to what we had in the past, like the magazines or like the real sex that our ancestors used to have. It's so different, and so the effect it has on our brain, it's completely different. Which is why I think it does two main things. But the first one is that it messes up your sexuality. Second one is that it numbs your dopamine system. Now, the sexuality thing is easy to explain, right? I think pretty much everyone that has watched porn knows this. The first time you ever open up a website, it doesn't matter, right? You see any of the thumbnails, and all of them freak you out. Like literally every video, you can click a random thumbnail, and you're like, wow, it blows your mind, right? It's a very exciting experience. Mm-hmm. But then you start to do it more often. Well, Not just any thumbnail does it anymore, but you need a specific one. You start looking around. You say, oh no, this one doesn't got it for me. I'm going to watch this one. Or you start watching a specific category, right? You start searching for something like stepsister or MILF. You start to become dependent on that. Now, after a while, several years later, you're not searching for MILF, but you're searching for like interracial cuckolding or whatever. I mean, I get so many people messaging me that are just completely addicted to one very specific category. And usually it's something specific like cuckolding or whatever. And you sort of have conditioned yourself to get a fetish. You've rewired your brain. And so when you're conditioned to be dependent on this thing, and even when it isn't cuckolding, but even if it's something relatively harmless like a stepsister or a MILF, it's still something specific. And so when you end up with a real person, you're going to have trouble enjoying the real thing. Maybe you're going to have trouble getting an erection. Maybe you're going to have trouble keeping an erection or having it at like full strength, because a lot of people think, well, I can still get it up, but really it's like an 80-90% of what it could have been. You know, it's not a full strength, because your brain is constantly looking for more, because you've been conditioning yourself to be so dependent on porn. And I think that's one of the main things. And the other main thing is the dopamine thing. Now, dopamine, for those that don't know what dopamine is, it's like this, it's a neurotransmitter that drives the reward and motivation system in our brain. So from like an evolutionary perspective, whenever we did something that was evolutionarily satisfying to us, like we ate food, we built a fire, we won a fight, whatever it was, we got a hit of dopamine, because it's like the mechanism that tells us this was a good thing. You want to do this stuff again. It's reward and motivation. And so from this evolutionary perspective, obviously, sex, procreating is like the end goal, right? I mean, sure, eating food is important, but in some way we just do this so that in the end we get to pass on our DNA. And so we can see in the scientific literature as well that the amount of dopamine we get from sexual stimuli is just through the roof. It's just insane. And here's the problem. We get so much dopamine from sexual stimuli, but the availability of sexual stimuli is now so large, as we just talked about. It's possible to see more naked ladies in a single viewing session than our ancestors would have seen in an entire lifetime. Right. It gives us so much dopamine that it's more dopamine than our brain can handle. And what happens if our brain receives too much of a neurotransmitter or like a hormone? We can see the same thing with type 2 diabetes, for example. The receptors start to go numb. What we see in people with type 2 diabetes, they have more than enough insulin, but their body has gone numb to the insulin because the receptors have shut off. And the same thing
mechanism.
Yeah, same thing happens to dopamine. So when you bombard your brain with dopamine all the time, and watching porn is one of the most effective ways to bombard your brain with dopamine, right, the dopamine receptors start to go numb. And the whole system stops to function. It starts to function less. And the problem is the dopamine system is the stuff that drives reward and motivation. So when your dopamine receptors start to go numb, your whole life starts to sort of feel less rewarding. Yeah, things don't feel fun anymore. You play a video game and it just doesn't feel fun. You watch a movie and you're like, in the past movies were more fun. Motivation as well. Your long-term motivation, how hyped you are to work towards your goals, your long-term goals, and your long-term thinking processes. All of these things are dependent on your dopamine. And so as you numb your dopamine, all of that starts to sort of stop functioning. Well, stop functioning. It starts to function less. And that's the thing with porn. It doesn't happen to everyone, but porn can be one of the most effective, if not the most effective way to destroy your dopamine system. And I think it's happening to a lot of people. It certainly happened to me, and I can see it happening in a lot of other people as well. So I think those are like the two main problems, what porn really does to your brain, what it can do. Yeah.
Sure. That all makes absolute sense. And I have two things to say about this. One is, the reason it makes a lot of sense is that I think it's very primal, the whole sex drive and desire comes from a very primal place, from a very natural place. And, we're feeding it something that is the complete opposite from natural.
Yeah.
When we evolved to whatever you see now over the last, I don't know how many years, there was no plan to have, instant gratification systems that give you that primal need met constantly over and over again as much as you want on demand. So we do that in a lot of areas, but I do agree that with, and we'll talk about dopamine in other areas because, right, we do it with TikTok, we do it with social media, we do it in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
But sex is different. Porn is different because it's touching a very primal chord that I think, to your point, is a little bit more dangerous to fuck with, no pun intended. And then there's the other point, which is from a good friend of mine. He goes by Spiritual Growth Guy on TikTok, and he's talking about how you're moving your baseline up and down. So everything that, if you push your baseline too high with your dopamine, you're constantly bombarding it, like you said, and you're here, constantly. Then if you want to go to dinner with family, that's a decline from that new baseline.
Yeah.
If you want to do something fun with your child, if you want to enjoy a evening jog, that's no longer anything that's gonna stimulate that baseline that is constantly expecting crazy reward. So we need to bring our natural dopamine level to somewhere reasonable, to a spectrum that we can exist on, and that apparently, according to you, and I'm sure many more studies and experts that dedicate their life to these dopamine studies, is something that we need to probably find a more balanced approach to.
Yeah.
Because it's clearly not healthy to just have unlimited, constant access to this type of dopamine rushing reward without any attempt to actually get it naturally. Because in one of your videos you said, what about the actual pursuit of sex, whether you were a female or a male? You can't just open your app and get it over with.
Right.
I mean, you can, but should you? Which brings me to another point. You had a video you were talking about, the feeling of hunger. You were talking about, with a friend, and he brought up the whole point of like, oh, I'm feeling hungry. And you were like, bingo. Yeah. Feeling hungry.
Yeah.
You want to feel hungry, right? Because you're trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
And that was his case specifically. But talk about how that specifically, correlates with what we're talking about.
Yeah. So in that video, I made the point that I had a friend, and he told me he was losing weight. And he said, this is going to sound strange, but I actually like the feeling of being hungry because it sort of, it reminds me of that I'm actually losing weight. It's the feeling of losing weight. And for me, that clicked because I lost quite some weight myself as well. And I knew that. I had like a similar attitude towards that feeling. And most people are like, well, that's kind of crazy, right? You're supposed to... Hunger is a bad thing, right? They know that hunger...
It's a sign that you have to go eat.
Yeah, they know that hunger is part of losing weight, but it's like this bad thing that you are supposed to endure for the sake of getting results in the long term. But the way that I saw it was more like, hunger is the feeling of... Well, it's a feeling you get when you are losing weight. Now, sure, there's a nuance to it. I'm not trying to suggest that you should feel hungry 24/7 when you're losing weight, but it's a feeling you get when you're losing weight. The thing I wanted was to lose weight. And so I sort of associated that feeling with losing weight. And to me, it was a very good thing, actually. And I drew the connection between the hunger and the sexual urge you get when you're trying to quit porn. A lot of people always say that it's such a bad thing that you get a sexual urge when you're trying to quit porn. Because they think that this is, then you're supposed to suffer and you feel so bad all day because you have this urge and you're supposed to, constrain yourself. But you can use the same mindset for the urge. You are trying to quit porn. One of the things you're trying to do is get back that natural energy, that natural lust, that sexual lust that you felt when you were younger, that drove you to go outside and actually talk to real women, to do something that, whatever you're going to use it for, it's a good thing. You want to get back that energy, right? It's just a matter of mindset. You can choose to view it as a good thing or a bad thing, just like how you can do with the hunger. You can just... It's all about telling yourself whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And most people tell themselves that it's a bad thing.
Well, I think society told us that with time, the more modern we got, the more westernized we got, it was... we slowly got into satisfying our needs became easier and easier. So we told ourselves as a society, yeah, when you have a need, just satisfy it, because now we have the means to do it. You're hungry, eat. You're horny,
Yeah.
go have sex. Easier, just open an app and look at all the options you have.
We have unlearned to delay gratification. We don't know what it's like anymore.
Well, before, I don't think we delayed gratification by design. We just didn't have a choice.
True. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. We never learned to delay gratification. We just didn't have a choice in the past. Yeah, yeah, true. That's a better way of saying it. Yeah.
But we did enjoy its benefits without really, having much awareness to it. But I do appreciate the analogy and the line you drew there, because I first of all, I feel the same way about being hungry. It's not something you should freak out about. It's not going to tear your stomach from the inside out. It's just your body saying, okay, there's a chance here that you might be exerting more than you're inputting.
Yeah.
Which means that if you're trying to lose weight, then you're on the right track. Just do it responsibly.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's no... like the old saying you quoted Schwarzenegger in one of the videos about, he's something along the lines of no pain, no gain. How he got used to these high levels of pain, knowing that's what's driving his advancement in his field.
Yeah.
But having lost the ability to have a sexual urge, for some people, even inside a relationship, that are with their wife, their husband, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, that have reduced or suppressed sexual urges because they're numb.
Yeah.
Their dopamine receptors are numb, like you said, and their sexual drive is so affected by the weird stuff that porn brings about.
True. Yeah. I really like your example of when you have a wife or girlfriend as well, because I was guilty of this myself as well. A couple of years back, I had these days where, when I was at home, when I was like working from home, and I would get an urge. Now, normally you get an urge, and this is like a good thing, because you get a sexual urge, and then whenever you see your girlfriend or your wife again that night, you can make love to her, right? There's tension build up. You finally see each other again, and wow, there's passion and all of that. But now we think, ooh, I have an urge, and you're not using the urge to build up the tension and actually have that passion in the evening, but you're using that urge to watch porn during the day. You lose that sexual energy, right? And then your wife comes home that night, and you're like, yeah, hey, honey, and you give her a kiss, and you start cuddling on the couch. You lose it, right? There's the potential to have such passion and such great sex with a real person, but because there's the easily accessible porn, you don't do it. Right?
It's more common than we realize.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. But you walked right into my next question, which is, you said there's this, easy, readily accessible. Sorry, it's still 4 a.m. and I'm on my first coffee. So I'm gonna blur some words.
That's all right.
There's this readily accessible path, which is easier. And there's this, trick we do on our minds, that if we just take the easy route now, it's somehow going to lead to a better end result. And it constantly proves us wrong. but we just can't help ourselves from taking that bait.
True.
It's if you're into losing weight and running or going to the gym, sometimes taking that 30 minutes of fighting in the morning to get yourself in those shoes and starting to move and go to the gym or start your run. I just heard Cameron Haynes talk about this, and yeah, it sucks the first few minutes into what you're doing, but then your whole day looks great.
Yeah.
First, you have to force yourself to do the thing, the hard thing.
Yeah.
And then you thank yourself for the rest of the day.
True.
And this brings me to the example that you talked about, person A, person B. When you compare them, person A might think, okay, I'm just going to push this to the end of the day. And, by the end of the day, I'm not going to even end up doing it. And, you're trying to compare who's actually going on a better path. And person B is like, okay, I'm going to do this hard thing right now. I'll get it over with. And it sucks. And they don't like it for the first, 20, 30 minutes. But then they're happy that they did it. And they might even enjoy the workout or the run or the hard thing, whatever that is for them. Maybe it's, learning or putting an hour into the piano, whatever. But then over time, they're very happy with their decision because they're seeing the results they want to see. And you compare those two paths and, they might be parallels, but they're yield very different results. Well, that's wrong by definition. So I'm looking at this 3D. But my point is, if you put in the work when it's not what you want to do right now, and it just feels like, I rather just be a potato on the couch, like you said, and take the easy way out, that's going to yield certain results. If you are willing to delay gratification, not open a bag of chips or Pornhub or Netflix or whatever it is that is your instant gratification, your crime, right? And instead do the thing that you want to do, but you're just not willing to get your butt off and do, then you're going to get the results you wanted at the end that somebody else wouldn't.
Yeah.
But those paths are very different and they require discipline. And if we're constantly giving ourselves those rewards, right, in the form of what you want, whenever you want, on demand, then it's very hard to keep disciplined.
Yeah, it's extremely hard. Extremely hard, yes. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I think the main reason it's so hard is just, like you said before, we were never designed to do it. We were designed to get instant gratification because in nature, we were supposed to eat as much food as we could. We were supposed to have sex as often as we could. And so, yeah, food is the perfect example, right? Our instinct tells us eat as much food as you can. Well, obviously, if we do that right now, it's not a good idea because you get fat, you get health complications. Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's extremely hard. Our instinct was never designed to actually do it. And I think the key is to take manual control. That's the only thing we can do. We need to take manual control. And what the best way is to do that, that's very complex, man. I honestly don't know what the best way is. But when I speak from my own experience, to me, it's all about, there's like a balance between discipline and willpower, right? Because I'd say discipline is the power to do something whether you feel like it or not. And willpower is the power to do something because you want to do it. So some people, people have often said that I had a lot of discipline back in the past. I didn't have a lot of discipline. I just had a lot of willpower. I was focusing hard. I played like online poker. I had a phase in my life where I played online poker and I would grind away on the online poker tables and people said, wow, that Rob, he's so disciplined. And I was like, no, I'm not disciplined. I just want to do it, right? I feel like doing it. If I didn't feel like doing it, I wouldn't be doing it. And
those are two different things.
Yeah. And I think that when it really comes to overcoming bad habits, controlling yourself. You need like a balance. You need a balance between, because in the end, willpower isn't enough. You need some discipline as well, because there are going to be times where you don't feel like doing it.
That's right.
But I do think it starts with willpower, because you cannot convince someone to do something he doesn't want to do. If someone doesn't really want to lose weight, you can tell him all the best theories, you can give him the perfect diet, you can give him all these tips to train his discipline, but
right,
you need that discipline to begin with. And I think that really starts with like a reason. You need a reason. You need some positive motivation. Yeah, you need something that you want to work towards, something that you really want. That's where it starts. And when you have that something that you really want, then you need to start working on your discipline. And it's like the combination of those two things. I think that's really the key to sort of controlling yourself. But the underlying thing is the willpower and like having some people might call it purpose, but a reason, a why. Yeah, I think that is the most important thing. When I look at myself, the biggest changes I've made in my life, it all stem from me actually wanting to change. Right? I had a phase in my life where I didn't have a job, didn't have education. All I did was I lived in my parents' house. I played World of Warcraft. I smoked weed every day. I ate a lot of food. I was very unhealthy, very fat. My social skills were horrible. I was becoming very awkward. People always told me, you need to get a job, you need to do this, you need to lose weight. Never worked. Until I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to become healthier. I want to become better looking. I want to have success with women. And when I made that decision that I wanted to do it, I wouldn't say it became easy, but it became a hell of a lot easier. And that's the thing, right? You need some reason to do anything. And it's the same thing with quitting porn. I get a lot of people, especially on TikTok, that are like, hey, never knew about this yet. Wow, you're right, I guess I'm going to have to quit porn. And they don't really have that reason to quit porn yet. They're like, wow, that makes sense. I don't want to have these downsides of the porn. But it's only negative motivation, right? They want to get rid of the bad stuff, but they don't really have something in mind of why they want to get rid of the bad stuff. They don't really have something in mind of how it's going to improve their life. They don't really have
Not yet.
No, exactly. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. You need to start somewhere. But as long as you only have that negative motivation, it's probably not going to work. The people that really have success are the people that have something that they are working towards. So I think that is one of the most important things that you have to figure out when it comes to any type of change, including quitting porn.
I agree 100%. I tried all kinds of things in life, and a lot of my friends would say I'm disciplined as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like these experiences. But no, I agree with you. It was because I figured out the why to certain things.
Yeah.
Not to all things, but when I did figure out the why to some things, it made it go and happen.
Yeah.
And start going into motion. Whether it was I wanted to run a marathon, or I wanted to lose weight, or I wanted to get better at a certain thing. It wasn't, I'm going to be disciplined and do this every day just because.
Yeah.
It was because I knew
exactly
that I want this,
Yeah.
and I knew why I wanted this.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things that I think I want, but clearly I'm not doing them. So
Yeah.
evidently I don't want them that bad.
Yeah.
And probably more than the things I do want. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
We can't want everything, and also passionately go after them. So life is a good filter to showing you what do you really care about.
Yeah.
And when you have no actions behind your words, and you're going out there and posting on Instagram on your what do they call it, the New Year's resolution, that you're going to do this and this and become a master of an instrument and have abs by May or whatever, and then in the meantime you're chunking down muffins and playing Xbox,
Yeah.
then there's no actions behind what you said, and you just put out a fantasy for yourself and everybody else to look at, but really, you don't really want it.
Yeah.
You just kind of like feel cozy inside when you think about it for 10 seconds. But that's not having a why.
Yeah.
So I agree 100% that if you want to do what you're preaching, which I think is important, because it's not just porn that we're getting bombarded with ways to screw up our dopamine systems and our sexual urges, which is important for personal relationships. But it's also happening everywhere else. So if we can limit it in one of the most sensitive areas it's coming from, I think it could be healthy. And to your point, there's a generation that grows up with this, and you brought up a statistic that was scary to me, that kids these days start watching start being exposed to porn and watching it regularly around 12, 10, 9-year-olds sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is, for me, it's hard to perceive because I wasn't exposed to it at that age. But it becomes younger and younger when kids get exposed to it, and just like we're getting children, just like we're seeing them getting desensitized socially from social media and just the new age of living and growing up with an iPhone or an iPad or all of that stuff. You need to put porn into the equation too. Their sexuality is getting messed with at a very early age. What does that mean for them as adults?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Covered it, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah, because I think I saw porn for the first time when I was like 13. I'm 33 years old right now. I think it was 13. We had a computer, and you had to like download it through like, what was it? Kazaa or something, you had to download it. And I had a girlfriend when I was 15, and I noticed I had been watching porn for like 2 years, and not even as much as kids are doing these days, right? Because I had to go down to the computer. We had one computer in our house. I had to make sure that no one was at home. My parents were gone or whatever. My brother wasn't home. Then I needed to download the porn, So it wasn't as easily accessible. But still, after like doing that for like 2 years, my preferences became like a little bit more specific. No very perverse fetishes or anything, but you did start to look for a certain position, a certain camera angle, maybe a category, maybe you searched for something like big ass or MILF or something,
Right.
And so I had a girlfriend when I was 15, and I noticed that I wasn't getting it up as easily anymore. Now I didn't have like full erection problems or anything, but I knew it wasn't as easy as it was supposed to go, because I knew that I was a 15-year-old kid with an extremely high libido. So I knew that it wasn't supposed to go like that, and I knew that it was porn. Because whenever I was watching porn, I also noticed that certain videos didn't make it go up as easily, and some of them did. When I stumbled upon the right category with the right position, then suddenly it worked, and so I knew it's the porn. When I was 15, right, I had been doing it for like 2 years, and then like the very low accessibly version of what kids have these days. And I already noticed something, and so I quit watching porn for like a couple of weeks, and things went 100% back to normal again.
Wow.
But that was me back in the day when it wasn't as easily accessible. So right now, when you're 9 or 10 years old, and you have these kids have their own smartphone, right? They can bombard their brain nonstop every minute of the day when they're alone. As soon as they're sitting in their room alone, they can bombard their brain. It's going to be much worse. I think this is going to have very, very large effects on like a societal scale. I already get a lot of kids messaging me on Instagram with exactly these problems. They're saying, I can't get it up, or I get kids that say that they have a fetish. I had a kid that was like 14 or 15 years old.
Having fetishes when you're 15.
Yeah, this kid was 14 or 15 years old, and he had a cuckold fetish. He said, I can only get it up fantasizing about a girl having sex with a well-hung black guy. I don't even want to have real sex with her anymore. It messed up his brain, right? And he was insecure about it. It was ruining his confidence. So it didn't just mess up his sexuality. It just messed up his entire being.
Right.
And he was well,
Talk
I mean,
about
all
trying to
porn.
have a relationship with that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard to say to what extent porn plays an influence. Maybe this kid was already like very insecure by himself, but without a doubt, porn has a huge effect on that. Huge, yeah.
No, I could only agree with that. It's scary where this is going, and I can only hope that we can track back a little bit of society and find balance, just like we do with all things, right? When we make something up, something new, we usually go too far,
Yeah,
and then start finding our way back to a balanced place.
yeah, yeah. I hope that
It's the
happens.
Wild West.
Yeah, but
I do, I do too. I think that there's a chance it will, since you're saying that people are already reaching out to you, and the fact that your message is being accepted at the scale that it is an indicator to me that it is a problem that people are wanting to address and feeling like, okay, somebody's talking about my issue here, whether I want to admit that I have it or not. At least I can listen to somebody talk about it. And this is where I really like TikTok and YouTube and these type of platforms because it allows for people like yourself to open up a subject that they feel confident about, but also is not easy to talk about on a personal level, and putting themselves out there and sharing experience, thoughts, and their philosophy on something that most people would deem, taboo, or you shouldn't talk about this. It's uncomfortable, especially not if it's gonna make me feel embarrassed. And this brings me back to something I talked to my friend Julian that was on the podcast the other day, and we were talking about how authentic is the new cool. How Instagram, when it started, all it was about is Ferraris and Lambos and taking pictures with martini glasses by the beach, and
Yeah.
that was like painting some kind of a beautiful picture of someone's life, and that was what everybody wanted to see and what they wanted to recreate on their feeds. But it seems that people are flocking now to authentic,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what you're doing, and what you are. You are authentic. You're honest, and you're sharing your personal experience, your personal stories, and your deep thoughts on this. And I think you're right. I think this is a problem that's much bigger than we're willing to admit. I think that as individuals and as a society, we kind of like to shrug it off because it's kind of comfortable having porn around. It's kind of like something you keep in your back pocket, like yeah, don't fuck with my porn, right? Like I want to have it there when I need it.
Yeah.
But truly, it's been abused. We took it a little bit too far, and the fact that it's so readily accessible for anyone, it's unregulated.
Yeah.
What's stopping a 10-year-old from going into any porn website and looking up any category that would twist up his mind in a way it's going to be hard to fix? I don't know that there's any mechanism that does that.
No, our minds are
should there be
literally
one?
programmed to want to do it. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I see exactly how it happens. So I have nothing to say but that I agree with what you're saying, and it's a subject that you don't really seek out as an individual unless you've already been exposed to all the harm and you're trying to fix it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I've dealt with PTSD in the past, and I didn't seek therapy until I had no choice. I didn't seek help or even admit the problem until I had no choice but doing it.
Yeah.
AKA, rock bottom, right? And that's the thing, and that's really where you find wise. But also, it's kind of like where you pay the crappiest price. So we don't really like stopping when it's time. We unfortunately like to only stop and look at what we've done when it's a little bit too late, or not too late, but later than we could have.
Yeah.
stopped. So I think as a humanity, in a society, your voice is important because we do need to track back a little bit to a more balanced approach on this. And I'm not saying there's no place for porn in the world. I'm just saying that it needs to be a balanced one,
Yeah.
and not as readily accessible to every individual, every age in the world. It's very connected to the internet.
Yeah, true. Yeah, absolutely. I think about it the same. A lot of people in like the no-fap scene are very anti-porn. A lot of people probably also think that I'm anti-porn. I've heard that before. This is the anti-porn. I'm not anti-porn. It's I like to view it like I like to view alcohol. I know that drinking alcohol every day isn't good. If you're an alcoholic, it's certainly not good. But
Sure.
drinking a glass of whiskey on Friday night, to me, that's not a bad thing. I like to think that it works the same way for porn. If you do it once in a while, it's not that bad. Now, the problem here, and this is important to say, is that for some people who really have like a bad addiction going on for porn, it's probably best just stay away from it, right?
Right.
Because similarly to an alcoholic, if you are an ex-alcoholic, you try drinking once a week again, a lot of people fall back into their addictive pattern. So maybe for some people that is not realistic. But for other people, it is very realistic. They can watch porn once in a while, and it's fun. It can be fun. I mean, let's be honest. That's the reason why we do it so often, right? So I'm definitely not necessarily anti-porn. I just think that we should not do it too often. Doing it too often is the problem. I'm not morally against it or anything, no.
What is it doing to your personality,
Absolutely.
and to your individual needs? And as long as it's keeping you inside a balanced lifestyle, then you're fine. Just like with alcohol. So you talked about being selfish, which I think had a lot to do with what we're talking about in a positive way. Can you touch on that?
What exactly do you mean?
You had a video that you were talking about being selfish and how that could be a positive thing, because it's sometimes taken out of context. Like, okay, being selfish means, you don't only think about yourself, but sometimes you need to think about yourself first so you can take care of everybody else.
Yeah. I think I remember the point of that video. Need to dig a little bit into my mind now. But I think the point of that video, was that I see a lot of people that are sort of sacrificing themselves in the pursuit of pleasing other people. Like the perfect example of this is a lot of guys that are trying to impress a girl, right? And they think they are going to buy all these gifts for the girl and do this and sacrifice their own time to help her with her own work and comfort her emotionally. And the very irony here is that if you sacrifice yourself, you're sort of sacrificing your identity, the person you could have been, right? And you cannot take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself first.
Sure.
You think you are impressing the girl by sacrificing all of your time to comfort her and spend time on her and give her attention. But really, she doesn't want a loser that is sacrificing himself to lose her, by lack of better terms. Let's just roughly call it a loser right now. She doesn't want that. She wants the guy. She would rather spend time with a guy that is like confident and has an interesting life, an interesting personality, that is actually happy and satisfied with his own life, that has integrity. That one's important as well. She would rather spend a little time with that guy than a lot of time with a guy that is like someone that just tries to please other people. You cannot take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself first. And this is something that a lot of people tend to sort of forget these days. We see all these terms referring to the guys as betas and simps, etc. And I think, these terms aren't perfect, but they do describe the problem we are seeing. And this doesn't just
What is
work.
that? Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So, right, a simp is a term that is used against guys that like spend money and time on a girl trying to impress her, while really she's chasing the alpha guys, right? She's interested in the alpha guys, and then the beta guys are just thinking that they can win her heart by being the nice guy, but really it's not working. And one of the reasons it's not working is not because these guys are being nice, but it's because they are being desperate. Because a girl notices that the guy is being desperate. Right? Being nice is not the problem. If you are a confident, successful, attractive guy, well, not even just attractive, but if you are confident, successful, and you have integrity and you are nice, a girl's going to love it when you're nice. But the problem is, these guys are like, they're desperate. And that's the thing a girl doesn't want. A girl doesn't want a guy that's desperate because she wants a guy that... Now, let's put it this way. If you have an interesting life going on, then you are not desperate to get with one random girl. So the sheer fact that you are desperate to get with one random girl implies to her that you are desperate, and she just doesn't want that.
Sure.
And now this is just an example of seducing women, which is not it works on every aspect, right? It's like, it's an analogy to life. It's not just about seducing women, but it's like, let's say you have kids and you try to make sure that your son eats healthy and takes care of his body and goes to the gym. How can you make sure that your son does that if you don't eat healthy yourself? How can you make sure that he takes care of his body if you don't give the right example?
Right.
You need to sort of get yourself in order first, because we humans are very primal. Like we just talked about, all these instincts that we have. We follow by example. We like to follow by example, and it works better. It works better. And so you think, to get back to the point, you think that you are being there for other people by sacrificing yourself in order to spend more time on them. But really, if you spend some more time on yourself, aka being more selfish, building your own life, making sure that you eat healthy first, making sure that you work on your career first, that you work on your confidence first, because when you do these things, you set a much better example for your son. I mean, it's better to spend a little less time with your children, but to actually be a good role model, than to spend a lot of time with your children and be a bad role model. Because a lot of guys think this. A lot of guys think, yeah, you need to sacrifice your whole life and you need to stop going to the gym when you have children because you need to spend all this time with your children. And sure, there's a certain balance you should have, but you shouldn't sacrifice everything. You should still do, not necessarily go to the gym, but if that's something you like to do, or work on your own business, if that's something you like to do. If those are your girls, if that's your purpose, you should not give up on all of these things that you believe in. You should continue to do them. Because it's better to spend a little less time with your children and to be a correct role model than to sacrifice your own values and spend more time with your children while not living in the pursuit of your own values. And it works on like every aspect, whether it be raising children or trying to seduce women, whatever. It works on all these aspects. You need to sort of be a little bit more selfish. Take care of yourself first. Because when you take care of yourself first, it's so much easier to be there for other people, even if you can spend less time with them. Less quality time is more important than more time where you are a lesser version of yourself.
That makes perfect sense. And yeah, I can speak to that as well. It's something that I've seen happen in life, in the individuals that I've known, where someone just gives their entire identity up for their new relationship, whether that's family, newly newborns, or our girlfriend, boyfriend. In many cases, where the relationship actually worsens,
Yeah.
and and falls apart because this person gives themselves up, because
Absolutely.
what
Yeah.
somebody fell in love with is no longer there.
Yeah.
And as well as themselves, they can't really keep going with the life they're trying to fulfill, because they think they're doing the right thing by giving themselves up completely, but it's not true. Yeah, you need to sacrifice. You need to maybe do less of the things you love to a certain degree, but you cannot give up your personality completely, your identity completely, and no longer be yourself for other people, because then you're not going to be the best version of you for them when they need you. So like you said, if you give yourself up completely, what kind of example are you setting for whoever you're trying to satisfy, whether especially children, that basically whenever they meet, somebody and have children, that they should give up completely who they are? No, that's not what you want for them, and that's not, what they want for themselves. But it's true that being a little bit selfish and remembering that, even on a primal level, it's pretty much first, number one, myself, and then I take care of you. It's kind of like what we do in the airplane when the pressure, we lose a pressurized cabin, right? First, you put the mask on yourself, then you put it on the kid, because you can't help the kid if you can't help yourself first.
Yep.
I see the analogy, in the same way, and sometimes we lose track of where to apply that and how much. And just like in everything in life, I think a balanced approach is the best way. And it's kind of hard to gauge, because we swing so hard right now with all the Wild West new things we're dealing with, like the internet. The internet is still the Wild West. The cryptocurrencies is the new Wild West. All these social media platforms are the Wild West. It's these things we're still trying to figure out, and they're hard to figure out what is a balanced approach in. Porn has been around for a pretty long time now. Online porn, even for I want to say like 30 years, 20 years, if you had access to the internet. And it's not enough time for a society and a species to find balance, clearly, because we just are now figuring out that we're going too far one way, and people at their teens having a hard time having an erection, boys at that age having that kind of problem, and I don't even know how it affects on some girls. That should not happen. And that's unfortunate. So I really hope that we can track back on it, and that there's more traction to voices like yourself, and also systems that we can follow to help mitigate that.
I think it's going to be hard.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, because it's like especially like the dopamine thing, right? Not just talking about porn, but the dopamine thing. Because we also talked about social media a little bit before, right? Social media is also porn isn't definitely not the only thing that numbs your dopamine. Social media is huge. Video gaming, social media, and
TikTok is one of the biggest slot machine dopamine systems that just makes it available. You just keep swinging.
Well, that's exactly the problem. You see, first we had Facebook. Now, Facebook was relatively low dopamine. You had like a picture and you had like a story you could type. And then we got like Instagram and Snapchat or something. And what we saw is that it was only older people using Facebook then, because the younger kids, Facebook didn't cut it for them. It was too slow. They needed more dopamine, right? They needed the picture and then swipe, next picture, next dopamine hit, more likes, more. They needed more. And that's exactly why we also see TikTok right now. TikTok took that concept and then translated it to video. They made short videos. Why shorter videos? Because people have a shorter attention span. Because shorter video means more dopamine. Next video, you swipe to the next video. It's always the short videos. I mean, TikTok allows you to make 3-minute videos right now. I sometimes make a video that's like 2 minutes or longer. Doesn't work as well as the shorter videos. Because it's too long. It's too long. And now we see the exact same thing with YouTube. YouTube starting to freak out and thinking, oh shit, TikTok is the future. And so now YouTube
So
made
now they have
YouTube
shorts.
Shorts literally a copy of TikTok because they know that this is the future, right? People's attention span is getting worse and worse. If you take an average 14-year-old kid right now, you make him use Facebook, incredibly boring to him. Back in the past, when Facebook was new, people thought Facebook was interesting. There were people that would spend the entire afternoon on Facebook, right? But things are evolving. Things are evolving. And so everything is becoming more about dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. We see the same thing in video games. The video games these days are all about getting dopamine hits. You get all these chests and you unlock new things and you get more rewards. You get more rewards than ever. When I was a kid and you played video games, you would spend days, hours, weeks grinding until you got a reward. I played World of Warcraft, and there was this thing where you had like a rank you could unlock, and I wanted to get the highest rank. I played for like several months for 10 plus hours a day unlocking that rank, and then I unlocked that rank, and that was like the only thing I got. It doesn't work that way anymore right now. If you make a video game like that, no one's going to do it. No one's going to want to do it. It takes too long. You need to give people instant gratification. And so there's like the whole evolution on like everything in video games, in social media, and everything is becoming faster and faster and more tailored towards giving people as much dopamine as possible. And so even though
Where's it going?
Yeah, exactly. So even though there are more and more people that are talking about it, like on like a big societal corporate scale, everything keeps going more towards dopamine. And like, what are we going to do against it? I mean, are we going to like implement laws that are outlawing social media? I don't think that's going to happen, right? That's probably not something that shouldn't happen either, because there's some downsides to that as well. And so I don't know. I think it is possible to like save yourself on an individual level. If you are someone that watches, these videos making you aware of dopamine and you're working on it yourself, you can save yourself by not watching too much porn, by not using social media too much.
Right.
But on a societal level, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure if things are going to work out positively in the long term, in like the following 10, I don't know. I think at least the coming decades.
You don't think it's going to start from like an individual and slowly ripple out?
I'd like to think so.
Let me give you an analogy. Let me give you an example of where I saw it happen, and tell me if you think it's comparable. So, in the U.S., there was not too long ago a time where diet, nutrition, and the correlation to obesity was insane. It was absolutely off the charts. Everywhere was serving food that is basically poison, loaded with sugar, with corn syrup, and with all kinds of nasty stuff. And it was the most obese, I think, country in the world for some time. Maybe it still is. I'm not on top of the charts right now, but there was a certain time, where somebody said, "This is insane. I'm not going to participate in this. I don't want to be obese. I don't want to be unhealthy. I don't want to put this junk in my body." And it slowly started rippling out to the point where every restaurant in the country, including McDonald's, shows its, nutritional ingredients on every single thing. The calorie count is legally supposed to be on every single meal at even what we used to call junk food drive-through places. They serve salads and vegetables, right? They're getting with the times because everybody else is getting with the fact that this is killing people, right? Yeah. So there was a wave of, you can call it an awakening in a certain subject, in a certain industry, a certain area of life, which was healthy eating, and now it's a trend, right? Eating organic, eating healthy, it's it's a trend that brought industries to life, industries inside the food industry, like healthier stores like Whole Foods, right? In the States, it's considered a trend to go to Whole Foods. It's like a cool thing. Trader Joe's, all these trademarks that basically sell healthier lifestyle choices, and it's not nationwide decision making that is clearly going towards healthy eating, but it's definitely an uprising in that it started small and it started rippling into where everybody wants to participate in feeling better, looking better, being healthier, living longer, right? Eating to where your body doesn't feel like you're poisoning it. You don't think that's going to be somewhat equivalent to this? Because people are
Yeah.
realizing that dopamine is being screwed with. Forget about porn for a second, right? Even with social media,
Yeah.
there's documentaries about that. There's The Social Dilemma on Netflix. A major outlet that decided to put out a documentary that's very controversial if you're asking, how it's going to affect social media giants,
Yeah.
because it says it to your face, like this is screwing up your dopamine receptors. You're being, you know, you're like a little puppet on these wires. So, take a break from this thing. There's movies that, the resolution at the end suggests that you should take a break from digital life. Even Ready Player One, right? Great movie, but the resolution is they shut it down for 2 days a week or something like that. And I think we're slowly waking up to the fact that we need to relax from it. People do like, no phone a certain day of the week, or sober October for drinking and drugs in the States. I don't know if they do it outside the States. Stuff like that. You think that type of awakening to that area of life, dopamine in general, and then also NoFap, is that going to apply in larger scale, or is it just going to take more time, or you think we just don't have a chance and we're going to turn into cyborgs that constantly live off instant gratifications?
I do think that's a good point. I really like the healthy fooding example, healthy eating example. Yeah, I think it is going. There's a chance that things will flip. I mean, I'm not sure to what extent this will work. I do think that this one's going to be harder. This one's going to be harder than the food thing.
Because it's not threatening our lives.
I don't know. I think because it's like more of it's stronger. The dopamine mechanism is, well, a food also works through the dopamine system, but it's like, it's more easily accessible, it's more addicting. The whole dopamine is like, it's one step deeper, right? It's like,
Right.
Yeah, it's a deeper problem. So I think it's going to be harder. I mean, I definitely think you're making a good point. That there is a lot of things we already see, like the social dilemma documentary, and there are a lot of people promoting the ideas of quitting social media and stuff. And so hopefully it's going to work. I'm not saying it cannot work, but I honestly do think that this one is going to be harder. Yeah.
To your point, unlike food, these dopamine addictions and numbing mechanisms are not directly harming us in a way that would make you feel I shouldn't do this. So you're not getting a spank over the head. You're not getting a tummy ache. You're not getting high blood sugar, right? Or feeling like your heart's about to burst because you just ate a cheeseburger bigger than most of our ancestors ever ate in their 3 weeks worth. So we do a TikTok session for an hour. The damage that we do is not necessarily visible to us. It's kind of easy to digest. So unlike food, which, like you said, they do operate somewhat in relative terms together on the dopamine system, but food is more noticeable when you're screwing yourself up. It's noticeable immediately after you eat, and it's noticeable a month or a year in eating wrong because you feel like crap and you look like crap, right? When you're screwing up your dopamine systems on just in your head because you're watching TikToks and you constantly binge on porn or other things, you don't really see the results physically. So it's harder to scare yourself out of it.
True. I think that's a big part of it. But I also think it's the fact that the dopamine thing is like, it's more like everywhere, right? I mean, food is very nice. Eating food is very satisfying and stuff. But dopamine relates to like everything you do. As soon as you wake up, you pick up your phone, and watching a couple of TikToks is considered to be more fun than brushing your teeth or going for a walk, right? When you're playing a video game, playing the video game that gives you more dopamine is considered to be more fun than the video game that gives you less dopamine. And it's harder to cut down on the dopamine than to cut down on food, because when you're cutting down on the unhealthy foods, it's just the food. But when you're cutting down on your dopamine, it feels like you sort of like have to give up on your whole life, right? And that sounds like an exaggeration. It is a little bit like an exaggeration, but at the same time, it is, because kids spend all of their free time on their phone or on like a video game. And so like all of the things they do is all designed to give them as much dopamine as possible. But
well, that's where their supposed simulated happiness lies. Yeah, so giving up their happiness, giving up their lives. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like you have to give up more than just giving up food. Dopamine is a much broader, more all-overlapping problem. And so I think it's going to be a lot harder to tackle the problem.
Right. We need to make a turn as a society for that to make a certain impact. But in the meantime, all there's left is to save yourselves as individuals.
Yeah. But I do like the argument of the more that we are spreading the message and the more individuals we get that are trying to save themselves, eventually it might seep out into society, just like you said with the healthy eating example.
Yeah,
that might work to some extent, but again, I do think it's going to be hard.
Yeah, it's the message ripples. That's just how it works, but we don't know what the effects are going to be 50, 100, 400 years from now, and how the attack on the grab of dopamine and attention is going to be, because it might be much stronger than what we can fight off.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what you can say about the food example as well. I think the food analogy is a great analogy, but at the same time, I mean, yes, healthy eating is like a trend, right? But is it really enough? Because there are still a lot of people that are obese. There's still a lot of people that are unhealthy. So yeah, despite the fact that it is rippling throughout our society and that it is a trend, it's not quite enough yet.
Right.
It's not. So
I think that it's hard to gauge because we're so interested in seeing instant gratification. By the way, results, right? Because we want to make an action, see results, right? Whether that's in 1 year, 20 years, 50 years. In my lifetime, I want to see the results, the fruits of my labor. But sometimes it takes 1,000 years to evolve something into what we thought it should look like. In the timeline of humanity, having unlimited resources and online connections to the entire world is extremely new. I mean, it's a blip on the timeline, right? We only existed with it for such a short time. So clearly we're still messing around in what we call the Wild West for now.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see how our society is going to look like 1,000 years from now, 2,000, 4, 5, 6, 10,000 years from now with these type of, technologies and also unlimited access to resources and how we've evolved dealing with it. It will be interesting. I'd love to hear some, historians and what they think this is gonna end up looking like, because to our point, I'd love to see people not suffer from this, and also not turn into a species that cannot live without like a IV connected to their hand that's constantly dripping dopamine in them just so they don't die. I'd love not to see that, but I wonder, how this species is going to look like, a few thousand years from here, because if we just keep going the way we're currently going, it's going to be scary. But history tells us that, we do these like, waves. We go up and down and around and figure out what works best.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
What works best is not for me to judge, but I know that what we're doing right now is a little bit weird if you compare it to immediate history. It makes it weirder because history went like normal growth, and all of a sudden it went like this. We started seeing all these extreme, extremely new, innovative technologies that changed everything. Even in my lifetime, in your lifetime, we went from no phone, no cell phone. I still remember the internet that dials in, makes all these weird sounds in order to connect. And also, turning the dial on the telephone to call my friend, to having a computer in my pocket that knows everything I want to research and, connect me to every location. I remember calling the airport or my booking agent to book a flight. Who does that anymore? Right?
Yeah. When we were younger, the world was an entirely different place. It was,
but that's just one lifetime.
Yeah.
And you're only, 30. So like that extreme change wasn't inflicted on many generations before. This is pretty new.
Yeah.
Like I think our grandparents seen the most amount of change in one lifetime in relation to their relative ancestors. Like if you keep comparing them back to another generation and another generation and another generation, they all had relatively similar growth patterns, and then it's just exploded here.
Yeah.
And something else came to life. I don't think that, I might be wrong, but I don't think that our kids and their kids are going to see growth that is so extreme to what this, our grandparents' generation saw from birth to death.
Yeah, true. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense, because like our kids are probably, there's going to be change, but it's all going to be like more within the frame of what they already know, right? We saw like a change between the real world and the digital world, right? We saw like the world evolving into a digital world, and like every generation that comes now is more, they're going to see new technology, but it is more within the same technology. Does that make any sense?
I know what you're saying exactly. Whether it makes sense or not, but it's just going to be normalized a little bit. It's going to be, okay, so we have a phone with a screen on it and a camera, both on the front and the back. So now we have 3 cameras at the back and 2 cameras at the front. And the flash is stronger, but it's still a phone with a screen, right?
Although maybe there are things we are overlooking, because like VR and the whole metaverse, that might also be a huge thing. So maybe there's a lot more change coming still.
That's true. There's still a generation that's going to go from being born and living in the digital world more than they do in the physical world. Our
grandchildren are going to be like, what? You actually went out the door into the real world? We just put on our headsets. We go into the metaverse.
I really hope that's not the case. I mean, I know that the digital world is going to get very developed, and I think it's going to be great. I don't think it's a bad thing. But there's a friend I talked to that also been on the podcast. His name is Bon, and he dabbles into a lot of the metaverse, Web3 stuff, and he brought up a good point that there's a lot of utility for the metaverse to exist, both in VR and also in AR, augmented reality, where you put on your Google Glass or your Apple Glass, right, and you go outside, your smart glasses.
Oh, right. The augmented reality is like where you have where you're in the real world, but then with the glasses you see extra information and stuff. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And he brought a lot of examples where that could be extremely relevant. And for example, you're riding your, let's say, bicycle in Amsterdam, right? So you can see directions on your screen because you want to get to a coffee shop, or you're in a coffee shop and you're listening to a tune coming out of the speakers, and you look at the speaker, it tells you the name of the song, or the price of the cookie on the shelf, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of utility of the metaverse to kind of seep in through the cracks into the real world before we just plop into a lazy boy, put on our VR goggles, and never go outside again.
Yeah.
Which I think there's going to be room for that, more for entertainment and maybe even productivity. But I think that a lot of leisure, will still happen outside the house. And I think we should push for that as a society and want that, because otherwise we're just going to turn into worms, and just literally die on our couches.
Yeah.
So I hope that's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah, the augmented reality is going to be an interesting thing as well. That's going to have a lot of implications. That's probably also going to bring a lot of downsides.
Like, what do you think?
Well, I actually was writing a concept for a video, which made the analogy of playing video games in a mini-map. Have you ever played video games?
Yes.
Yeah, and so do you know, like, games like, for example, The Witcher, or games that have a mini-map that show you where you are going? Mm-hmm. For the people that never play video games, don't really know what I'm talking about, but in video games you often have like a little mini-map on the top of your screen that shows you where you are and where you're going. And so when you have a quest, when you need to go somewhere, the mini-map shows you like a direction. One thing I started to notice is that I spend a lot of time watching the minimap. And because you are watching the minimap so often, you are not really watching what is going on in like the world that you're playing. So for example, I was playing The Witcher, and you're not really noticing, like, if you need to take a turn, you can go two directions. You're watching the minimap. You're not actually watching the turn. You're not actually watching the environment. You're not watching the details. You're not really noticing these things anymore. And so I went on like another playthrough. I played that game. Now, this was a couple of years back, but I played that game for like several times already. And then I decided to go on a playthrough without a minimap, which is sort of inconvenient at times because you need to open up your map and then you get lost all the time,
Right.
But I remember I was walking through that world, and it was literally as if a world opened up to me. I had played that game from start to finish 3 times already, but this time I like entered the main city, and it was as if I've never seen that city before. On my 4th playthrough, I was like, whoa, all the details, the layout. It was as if I was actually in the city, as if I was actually experiencing it for the first time instead of just looking at my minimap going from point A to point B. And yes, you sometimes get lost, but I would much rather get lost into a world that you're actually immersed into than to know where you are going in a world that doesn't really get your attention. Right. And I think this is something that really augmented reality, it's going to pose a similar problem, because we already have it with our smartphones, and especially when we're wearing these glasses. Right. It's essentially the same concept as the minimap. You are going to watch all this information. You are going to watch all these details. I mean, imagine being a tourist in a new city, right? You go to Paris or something. Instead of actually watching the city, you're just going from point A to point B, right? You're watching the directions and you're going to the Eiffel Tower, and then you stand there and you're like, okay, that's cool. That's the Eiffel Tower. Now we're going to the next attraction. You just go from point A to point B. You are not there in the city. You are not experiencing the details, the layout of the city, the people. It's going to sort of like partially take you out of the real world and shift your attention into the digital world.
I see what you're saying.
And it has a lot of practical implications, but I also think that it's really, it's going to take the fun out of real life, because technology isn't always better. Just like with the minimap, yes, it's faster to use the minimap, but at the same time, you are not immersed as much into the world. I had more fun playing the game without the minimap than playing it with the minimap and being more effective. And I think that's probably going to work the same way in real life with augmented reality.
Have you watched Ready Player One?
No, I haven't. No.
Highly recommended. And it's very relevant because we are actually going into this metaverse state and development, and it's accelerating. It has a lot of interest, but the fun thing about that movie is the ending. And spoiler alert, it's nobody dies a tragic death or anything like that. It's just how we like to end movies with a little bit of hope, and a happy ending. And in that case specifically is that they decide to shut down the metaverse every 2 days a week or something like that.
Okay.
Because people want to also live outside and not forget what the outside world is and enjoy that world that you're talking about potentially missing. And I think it's a good example to what you just said, because at the end of the day, the technology is going to be there. It's going to be up to us to make a decision how to utilize it and how much to utilize it. If you, as an individual, want to abuse it and never take it off your eyes or your life and live through it, then that's up to you. If you want to live a balanced, healthy lifestyle that is not constantly bombarded with information, but sometimes allow yourself to get lost in a city and just enjoy the vibe and feel the cobblestone under your feet and smell the smells and look around and run into a person and maybe even talk to them. Who knows? That would be up to us as individuals, I think, to decide. And I hope we decide what we want, but also what used to be considered old school, because there's beauty in it. I agree that I wouldn't want to miss. I know that I definitely wouldn't want to live in a digital world 24/7. I would probably not want to live in it more than a few hours a week, where I just use it for practical purposes or entertainment. But at the end of the day, living in the real world is what I find currently most enjoyable. And it's not because it gives me a lot of dopamine. It's just a sense of peace, breathing real air, looking at the mountains, feeling, the dirt of the road under my feet. It's something that's gonna be hard to replicate, and I guess it's the sense of realness that is gonna be when that gets simulated, then we're gonna be in a pretty scary place.
True. Yeah. And I think you make a good point as well about enjoying the real life, because a lot of people, when they hear us talk about stuff like this, might get the impression that we're supposed to sacrifice fun stuff, right? That dopamine is the fun stuff and that we are supposed to sacrifice the fun stuff. But the irony is that when you don't chase dopamine all the time, life actually becomes more fun. Because when you bombard your brain with fun stuff, like the stuff becomes less fun. When you sort of like go on like a dopamine detox, well, detox is not like a thing you do one day, but when you start to eliminate social media and porn, etc., you start to enjoy life so much more. Like the little things, just going on a hike or having a talk with a family member, having a family dinner or something simple is so much, it's actually more fun than just playing that video game all the time or browsing social media all the time.
Right.
And so that's like the irony of chasing pleasure, chasing dopamine, is that the more that you chase pleasure, the less pleasure you actually start to experience.
Right.
I think that's something very important to realize. It's not about sacrificing pleasure. It's actually about you actually start to get more pleasure, but you need to make like sacrifices in the short term in order to eventually get to that point where things start to become more pleasurable.
Right. Yeah, it's what we talked about from before, you know, the baseline. If you constantly have this baseline stuck up here, nothing, you know, this is an example I stole from my buddy, spiritual growth guy, but he makes a perfect example, like dinner with family. When your baseline is here, you know, how is that going to feel? Nobody wants it. It's like, you know, you're going down. Like, I hate having a good time with my family. That sucks. You know, I want to be like here, you know, porn, video games, TikTok all day. Like, yeah, when your dopamine is here, what is a Sunday morning run in the park gonna feel like?
Yeah, and a kid might find this hard to believe, but when you actually shift your baseline, a dinner with family is going to be more fun than browsing TikTok. It is. It is going to be more fun.
and it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, as a kid, I don't think you would be able to even convince me that, you know, a dinner with family is funner than playing my Nintendo 64 back then.
It depends on your phase in life as well. Dinner with family is just one example. I mean, if you're like a teenager, then maybe, you know,
it's a little harder.
Yeah, but it's just one example. I mean, the point is the lower dopamine things, the realer things, the more real life things can be more fun than browsing TikTok and playing video games once you actually sort of shift your baseline and reset your dopamine system. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, cool, Rob. I think we covered everything.
We've covered quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, sure. Sounds like a good idea.
All right, man. Well, take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for having me, man. Enjoy your day as well.
And later.
Bye.